Welcome. Welcome to this session. I'm Sabine Matharu, and I'm the founder of the Empowerment Portal, and this is one of our EmpowerMENow webinars to actually help people in the current crisis. And as always, I have three amazing speakers with me, and I'm going to just briefly talk about the agenda, what you will learn today. And of course, if you do have any questions, or if you're watching the replay, please let us know. We'll be very happy to support you. So firstly, we'll be talking to Gloria Prest, who is a hypnotherapist, but she's also a bereavement counsellor. And I thought it may be quite relevant at this time, quite unfortunately, that people are potentially, losing loved ones. And I think Gloria will just talk a little bit about, what to actually expect when someone is going through the grieving process, and then what to say to someone who's recently bereaved, and how to support them without offending or upsetting them unnecessarily, because it can be a bit tricky to actually know what to say and how to go about it. And of course, I'm sure she's going to probably support, and also Susanne will actually talk to you about how to I guess keep I can't say it's positive, but it's about reducing the anxiety in these times, and what to do, and how to distract yourself, and how to constantly not to feed yourself with negative news. So that's Susanne who's going to be next. Susanne Wiechert. She is a health empowerment and resilience coach, a really also very powerful lady. And she will also talk a little bit about really interesting topic, the out-of-the-box thinking and creative action to shift from fight to flight to inner calm and proactive thinking. And I really, really love this, Susanne. I'm sure you're going to have lots of sort of fun things to share around that as well. And we'll talk mainly about how we can actually nurture joy in these times amidst this whole adversity that's going on around us, and to discover a larger version of ourselves in this process. And then last but not least, we'll be talking to the lovely Lynn, who is the Queen of Hearts, and her title of the talk will be How to Survive the Relationship with Yourself and Your Spouse During Lockdown. And I think you can also maybe add other people around us, like the children, or maybe you have elderly parents that you're trying to manage on the phone, and then they may be anxious. So there's quite a bit of a ripple effect, and I think it's all about seeing how we can continue a loving relationship, and how we can kind of function in a harmonious way. Because right now, let's face it, I'm exactly in the same boat. I've got the children at home, and then I have a husband, and I've got the household, and I've got two businesses, and you're kind of trying to split yourself in so many different people, and the time as well. And maybe sometimes I'm made feel guilty because I'm spending time working instead of homeschooling, and it's all this kind of stuff going on. So I've been talking to Lynn about that, and how we can kind of just you manage through these times, really. So thank you so much. And in the very, very end, if you allow me, I just wanted to share a couple of things as to what we do in the Empowerment Portal to actually help women and men who may be going through some really anxious times. And we actually have put together a bit of a survival kit to beat anxiety and stress and uncertainty. So if you would like to get a survival kit, then we'll actually share that towards the end of this webinar. Okay, so without further ado, let's go to our first speaker, and I will just go, and I think you can unmute yourself, Gloria. Nice to have you here. And if you're joining on Facebook, I'm just checking if we are on Facebook too. I will just do that in the meantime. You go ahead.
Okay, right. Okay, let me just have a look at, oops, sorry, I'm just, right. Okay, I'm trying to, I've created a little presentation, so I'll try to go through that in a minute. But just to let you know that we're going through really tough times in many ways, but it's not tough for everybody. Some people are in better situations than others. But when we talk about bereavement and about grief, we're talking about loss. But loss can be of any kind. Obviously, the most dreadful and the most dramatic and the most painful is when you lose a loved one. But there are lots of different losses, because you can lose your job, and sadly so many people in these circumstances are losing their jobs. So it could be a loss of a relationship, it could be a loss of a friendship, it could be a loss comes in many ways. And also when you have the loss of a loved one, there are many losses that come combined with it. So it's not just about the physical person that's gone from your life. It could be financial security, it could be the role that they fulfill now somebody else has to do. So there's a whole lot of readjustment, but I'll just give you an overview. Hopefully, let me just share my presentation if that is in here. Right. So okay. So basically, it's dealing with loss. It could be any kind of loss, but in these days, obviously, the most relevant one is the loss of a loved one. So you know, it brings loss and bereavement, as I said, it sort of relevant to any kind of loss, and it's just about readjusting. It's about readjusting yourself to life in a different way. So it's all about reassessing where you are and readjustment. And just to make it very clear that it is a very unpleasant process and it's very painful, but that doesn't make it less natural. Okay. Because one thing that makes it worse is when people have fear, because they're going through these horrendous sort of ups and downs and negative emotions and bad feelings and all these things, and they think that they may be going mad. So there is an element of fear, which is not necessary, because if you understand the process, you know it's going to not be a nice one, it's going to be unpleasant, but you don't need to fear that you're actually losing your marbles as well. Because if you assess someone who's going through the grief of having lost a very close person, a loved one, if you don't know what's going on with them, you just assess them independently of the circumstances without knowing anything about them, you could actually diagnose them with having a serious mental health issue, which is not the case. This is how hard it can be for some people and some circumstances, not for everybody. So it's just different for everybody, but it is nevertheless not particularly pleasant thing to have to go through, but is a natural one. And in the normal course of events, if there are no other complications, people just get through the process and manage it and come out of the other side, not forgetting it by any means, but managing life with that loss in a way that they can still find meaning and joy and just carrying on. So now the one thing that I want to make quite clear is also there is no hierarchy of need, of grief. My grief is not bigger than yours, as yours is not bigger than mine. And the reason I say this is because many of the clients that I've helped with grief, is just that they feel really guilty because they're feeling really bad, but they think, but my grief can be as bad as the other person. So you don't feel that you have the right to grieve for that person as much as somebody that you consider they're closer to them. Or, you know, my grief can be as bad as the grief of a mother who loses a child or whatever. The thing is, there is no hierarchy of grief. You feel what you feel and they feel what they feel. And because they might feel it greater, it doesn't mean that you have to put up with the way you feel. It's like I explained to some people, imagine that you have a friend of yours has got a broken leg and it's very painful. And you've got a stone in your shoe. Well, in comparison, there is no comparison. But would you leave the stone in the shoe because the other thing is worse? So if you're feeling bad because you have a loss, you have the right to seek support and you have the right to express your grief. There is no reason why you shouldn't because somebody else have got it worse. Also, you can't assume how people are feeling because some people express it very openly. They're okay with expressing what they feel, but other people that might not express it might feel it even worse, but they just don't have that ability to just be open about it. So I just want to give you a brief idea. If for someone who is going through serious loss, and in this case I want to talk about loss of a loved one, particularly when it comes all of a sudden, and all of the deaths are coming through COVID, you know, this is obviously relevant to all deaths, but at the moment that's the one that's going through people's minds. Then there is an initial process that seems to be, okay, more or less the same for everyone. And that is, you start by having this initial shock, the shock that suddenly somebody's just no longer there, that you've lost someone, that something horrendous, whether it's an accident, specifically it's been something sudden. Obviously, if you have someone who's being ill for a very long time, you have a time to getting adjusted to the idea and say goodbye. So this, it still comes as a shock because you never think it's going to happen. And after the shock, normally comes a time of numbness where you actually don't feel anything. So people feel like numbed, and then sometimes you can get fooled to think, actually, I'm coping right well. It's not as bad as I thought. You know, I'm not feeling anything, neither good nor bad, just nothing. It's just numbness, almost like being anesthetized. But that's only a short time, and that's a safety mechanism that we have, so that you manage to almost hold yourself a little bit together for what's going to come. So that's why normally it happens after shock. And then you have this denial. No, this is not real. This hasn't happened. This is just a nightmare. I'm going to wake up and it was just, you know, a bad dream and it's not real. That tends to be a natural process. And then what comes is not, some people put it in a line and it goes like this, you know, you feel this and that, and then you go down into depression and then you come up. But I have put it differently because it gives the wrong idea. What you have is a mix of feelings, emotions, sensations, and it could be anger, and it could be tears and frustration and a lot of guilt usually, and fear and anxiety. But also, in amidst all of that, you will have moments of calm, and you might have moments of being distracted, doing something, or even laughter, and remembering the love. So there will be little bits in between. It's not solid pain usually. Some people feel that if they have a little bit of laughter or calm, that then they feel guilty, that they should be feeling really bad. It's not necessarily like that. So that you can get used to the fact that a lot of different emotions will wash over you, and it's okay to feel whatever you feel and allow it to pass. It's quite natural. So eventually the self-compassion and the calm and the things become bigger and the pain subsides. But that is a process which is dependent on the circumstances, dependent on the strength of the relationship with the person who's gone. So the more you love someone, the more you will miss them, the more you will feel the pain, you know. And in some cases, there is relief, because if the person have been ill for a very long time and suffering very badly, there is that relief, and then people feel guilty because they almost think that it feels like they've been wishing that the person died. So there's a whole lot of, it's a pick and mix, and that's why I haven't put it in a particular linear way. But ultimately, what happens is that there is an acceptance of the situation, and people sort of reorient their life. They have to also learn an awful lot of skills in many cases. They have to change roles. There will be all sorts of different circumstances for different people. And eventually they just find a way to readjust to the new life without the person, but with the person still remaining in their lives. You know, they have a continuing bond with that person, so you don't cut all of that. So as I said, it just leads to this acceptance of a new reality, often learning new skills. If the person who died was the one who did all the bills, or did all the driving, or did all the cooking, the person remaining has to learn those skills. And there is a, you know, a reorientation in your life, and then, you know, a new adapted future. So it's not, it's a painful process, but it has a natural, hopeful and beautiful, you know, continuation of that bond with the person. So it's not all that bad. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is it's very difficult, and I was one of these people until I started understanding grief in the process. I didn't know what to say to people, and because I didn't know what to say to people and I didn't want to upset them, I ended up avoiding the person, and that is just not very nice. Because if you are going through this really not particularly nice time, and then people are avoiding you, it's like a, you know, adding insult to injury. So what to say to people? Now, there is nothing you can say that is going to make a difference to the reality that they're going through. but just acknowledging that sometimes is enough. So I would say the main thing to do is to acknowledge and ask. So acknowledge that you know that they've had this loss, and in whichever way you say, I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm aware that you, and then say that there's nothing you can say to make a difference to the outcome, but then ask them how they want to handle it. Would they like you to approach to talk about it? Would they prefer not to talk about it? If they want to talk about it, they can give you the signal when they want to do it. If they prefer you not to mention it, then you don't mention it. So give them the choice and let them know that even if you don't talk about it, that you are there supporting them in presence. So it is that you are there for them, even if you don't. Somebody put it like, you can sit with them in their morning bench, you know, sitting beside them in a, you know, sort of figurative way, but just so they know that you're there and you're thinking of them, and that's all you need to know. And then these are just, I volunteer for the organization CRUISE, which is bereavement counseling, but also I found so that I have lots of good resources in there, and also the Marie Curie organization has a long list of different organizations and support for people who are going through bereavement. And if anybody has any questions or want to ask me, please do just send me an email or contact me through my website, and I'll be happy to help. And that's me. So I'll stop sharing and I'll get back to you.
Oh, brilliant, Gloria. I think that's really, really valuable. I didn't know if you had, you know, that you can actually ask the question, how do you want me to support you, or how do you want me to address you, kind of thing. It's yeah, really, really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it is quite a few people that have said that it's so painful when people are ignoring them. The people literally just walk to the other side so they don't have to face them, because, and they don't do it with malice, they do it out of embarrassment.
Yeah, and I think this goes to, this is also when someone is ill, that you know, perhaps someone has a really profound illness, and I think it's the same way that you would approach them, right?
Or when they've lost a job or something, you acknowledge and then ask them how they want to handle it, and you just follow. That's it.
I love that. Thank you so much, Gloria. Good. So we're going to speak to Susanne now. She's going to talk to us a little bit how we can distract ourselves from the constant news. And I mean, I for one, I'm actually not watching the news much. Of course, I need to know what's happening in the world, and I'm acknowledging that. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this webinars is actually so I can actually support the people that I have around me and impact them directly. So Susanne, it's your stage now. I'm gonna make you quite big on the screen. So welcome.
Right, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me all right. Can you?
Yes.
Good, yes. Brilliant. Yes, okay, so what to distract yourself with? Well, I mean, the thing is, of course, we're all in this position. We're at home, and so therefore we have our four walls. We have some of us have gardens, some of us have, more space, others have really very, very little space. I think what is really important is to, first of all, establish how much space, well, how much space that you have, because you need to be able to have your own space. Because when you are all together and you get on top of each other, sometimes it becomes a little bit too much, because you want to be able to get along, but at the same time, not everybody sees eye to eye within families or within friends, or it doesn't matter what the environment is. We can't really expect to get on with everybody all of the time. So one of the things that my son and I do, I mean, we're under the same roof. I have a 24-year-old son. He goes into his room to have his space, so that we're not in each other's space all of the time. I look a lot to nature. I'm very fortunate to be able to go out of the house, and within less than 10 minutes walk, I have woods close by. So I just okay. So going back, just recapturing what I was talking about, that I'm very fortunate in having some really lovely surroundings, and of course not everybody has that. So I can escape when I want to. I can literally run into the woods and be amongst the bluebells and things like that. But if you're not in that kind of a place, you still need to establish a little bit of space for you and make an arrangement with those who you are living with, for, you know, to have times where you can have that space just for you, to distract yourself, to do some mindfulness, to do some reading, to do something that you really, really enjoy doing. And one of the things, for instance, if you're wanting to do things with those you're living with or with your friends, something that my son does, which is really great actually, he's doing WhatsApp parties where they're watching things on television together, a favorite program, something like that. It's really, really fun. But mindfulness, I think, is something that many people have been asking about, to be able to get their attention from that CNN, that constantly negative news. Because whilst we want to know what is the latest that we have to know, we don't want that at the forefront of our mind. We want to really be able to create calm, to be able to manage the thoughts in our mind. And first point, of course, is always to have to focus on your breath, to see how that breath is working throughout your body, and to be able to actually control it yourself, because you can. Nobody else can get into your mind except for you. You can tell your body, you can literally tell your body to calm. You can just start taking lovely deep breaths. So when I say to you, drop your shoulders, you can drop your shoulders. When I say relax the jaw, you know what I'm talking about, because quite often we're doing this with our jaws in our teeth, aren't we? Let that tongue drop from the roof of your mouth. So it's meditation and mindfulness are really, really good ways to distract yourself. There are a lot of things out there that you can search for, or you can, have somebody guide you. It's one of the things that I do. But mindfulness and meditation is a really good place to start, to be able to gain some calm from all of that negative news. But if you're wanting to do something a little bit out of the ordinary, something that's a little bit different, I'm going to show you something that I just did with a client just the other day. Now, this might look like a child's picture to you, but actually it's not. This is an exercise that I did with a client, to be able to let go of frustration and anxiety and to rebuild. And this is what I call out of the box thinking, because we don't always want to talk about things, or we don't always know how to talk about things. And Gloria was saying earlier on about, when you're going through that process of grief and loss and fear, and you finally get to that point of acceptance, it can take an awfully long time, and we don't always know how to do that. And, when we are stuck either by ourselves in these four walls, this is something that we can do. So my suggestion to you in this is to really get in touch with your senses and to think about them in colours and shapes. And if you are feeling really frustrated, to literally get some colouring pencils, some felt tips, even just a regular pencil, and just scribble away on that sheet. Now, when you have gotten rid of all of that frustration and anger, what you do is you begin to tear that piece of paper up into tiny little pieces, lots of pieces. It can be really satisfying to start tearing a piece of paper really into lots of pieces. And it's a little bit like, bubble paper. It can be quite calming too. If you've got some bubble paper, lots of people like to press those bubbles and make them burst, don't they? It's that same kind of feeling. So if you first of all created a picture that isn't any particular kind of picture, but just a release of whether it is fear, whether it's frustration, whether it is anxiety, whether it is confusion, just get it all out onto that piece of paper and then start tearing it up. And then think about what colours do you associate with? Use those. Think about if the shape, is it a spiky shape? Is it, you know, a round shape? Is it, what kind of texture would that emotion have, where you're then going to put something together to rebuild it as something new? So what we're doing is we're getting rid of those feelings, we're tearing them up to be able to let go of them, but we're going to then start to create a collage. And if you have some coloured paper as well, you can tear your coloured paper into pieces too, and to be able to add to something new, because you're going to rebuild something that you can feel good about. And when you have finished tearing all of those pieces, you're going to sort them and get rid of some of them, because you can let go, right? You want to let go of what you don't need anymore, but hold on to some of it, because we always have emotions of anger and fear and things, and that's part of life. Anxiety is part of life. There's a good amount of anxiety. We need that too. So what we did in this picture, if I bring it a bit closer, you might see these are all the little bits of paper have been stuck to create a new picture. And these are the torn pieces. And we created this. And one of the things that we did was we used some of these torn up pieces of frustration, and we created clouds with them, so that they represented clouds that come in the sky and float away. We created a flower out of those pieces of frustration and added colour to it. So we rebuilt it as something really positive. So that's a kind of a little art therapy exercise that you can do. So that's one of the, you know, out of the box thinking things that you could perhaps consider to be able to shift your energy from that fight and flight. You know, first of all, get rid of that with your scribble and whatever else you want to put, and then begin to let go and find that inner calm as you then put a collage together. It doesn't have to be a flower, but it can be just something that then represents something new. You're going from that place, because you may not be in a place where you know how to accept. You may not be in a place where you know how to handle things, but you want to let go of frustration without necessarily talking about it or looking for more information. And one other thing that I'd like to share with you that I do with my clients to be able to reframe things for them is to just work with what is now in the moment. Of course, this is part of mindfulness, and we can find things to be grateful for. We can find things to laugh about, to find joy. And again, as Gloria mentioned, you don't have to feel guilty about it. You know, this pandemic that we've got at the moment, of course, affects everybody, the whole world. But you can be going through a loss, you can be going through something that's really serious, but that doesn't mean to say you don't have a right to find something to smile about or to laugh about. Laughter is medicine. It helps to strengthen the immune system. We want to continue to rebuild and to build upon our resilience. So what else can you do? Practice gratitude with mindfulness and meditation and breath work. And as you look at those simple things around you, just within your immediate environment, or look to nature, you will begin to find things that you can actually feel good about. And I'd like to finish with a poem that I wrote that is, I think anybody can relate to. And I use this as part of my day one. I'm currently doing a course called Less Worry, More Peace in 7 days. And it is based on the principles of gratitude with meditation. And one of the things that I asked my participants to do was to look at their hands. Just look at your hands and think about what your hands mean to you. So I'm going to read this poem just to finish off, to get you in touch with what you can feel really good about for you, okay? So take a look at your hands, and what do you see? I see a pair of hardworking and faithful friends that look after me. They help me dress and undress each day, to wash and groom myself, to cook and clean and wipe away. I see a pair of dedicated friends that held and pushed and pulled year after year, never giving up, always trying again, to do that which was necessary, even relieve some pain. I see a pair of loving friends that touch and care, caress and heal, whether for lover, child, mother, father, or stranger, it matters not, each deserve this love to feel. Look at your hands, what do you see? I see creators of so many things, the list is endless. Directors, writers, indicators, instruments, paintbrushes, typists, speakers, bakers, I shout with glee. Look at your hands with love and tenderness. Know that not all have the use of something so precious. Appreciate, respect them. Remember with sweetness all that is meaningful, an extension of you, so special.
Wow, that's amazing. Did you write that poem?
Yes.
Oh.
So it's finding joy in the simplest of things, and the first place to look is yourself.
I love that. And that paper exercise is a good one. And yes, I understand exactly. The kids are always, when we get some bubble wrap, that's the first thing they want to do, to squeeze those. Nice one. Thank you so much, Susanne. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Lynn, are you ready to talk about relationships? And if you're feeling a bit crammed, or we're sort of sitting on top of each other whilst on lockdown, I think Lynn will be able to bring some light into this whole situation, isn't it?
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we're good.
All right. So how to survive the relationship with yourself and your spouse and any other relatives or friends that you might be in lockdown with. But, in the main, my area of expertise is around relationships with your significant other. So it is a really, I think both Susanne and yourself just touched on it a little bit, that, first and foremost, we do need to work on ourselves and be mindful of what we're doing in our relationships and how we're managing our self-talk, because, this can be a bit of a mind bully, can't it? And it can be a case of you wanting to get your point across and be in control of that situation. And sometimes, you know what, it's just better to sort of step back sometimes and be still and think, for me, what's more important? Is it more important to have the intimacy with my partner, or is it more important to be right? So sometimes I think it's important to think about picking your battles, in other words. And usually no battles are worth fighting over, because when we think about usually whatever arguments we've had previously, they've usually been over the small stuff, haven't they? And there's a lot of truth in don't sweat the small stuff. And in this situation that's quite abnormal for us now to be forced into a lockdown, I do feel it's it's important to get your own designated space. And I think Susanne touched on this as well. So for me and my partner, we actually do get our diaries together. We see, you know, what time we are going to need to actually be working on work, so to speak, and what time we've got available outside of that, and synchronize our diaries so that we are giving each other that space to sort of concentrate on our work if we needed that privacy of making phone calls or being on something like this, a webinar, and also giving each other that time when we can come back together and be in the same room again. So having designated spaces for an office space where you can designate that to your work time, and being mindful of sharing that responsibility to make sure you're accommodating of what time your partner needs through the week and what time he needs to give to you as well. And also, if you do find yourself in a situation where there is a bit of conflict going on, to be mindful and catch yourselves. Don't sort of beat yourself up and think, oh, you know, I've lost my temper again, or he's lost his temper again. But actually catch yourselves and probably have some sort of code where you can sort of give yourselves let's have a time out and separate and go to another room. And the same with your children, really, you know, is to teach that it's okay to have time out, not just as a punishment, but just because you need that space alone. And especially for guys, I think, because it's quite common for men to need space, especially after you've had a lot of intimacy as part of their natural connection and love rhythm. And it's not about that they fell out of love with you. It's just about, you know, they just need to recharge the batteries. And sometimes I think women can think, oh my God, you know, what have I done? What have I said to upset him? And it's not anything to do with you. It's just part of his rhythm. He needs to go to his cave, have some time out, chill out. And then when he comes back, you know, all will be well, and he can just pick up where he left off. Because men quite often are quite solitary, single, job focused. So if he's distracted on a job and you want some help with something, it's not always a good time to interrupt him if he's actually concentrating on something. So the best thing to do if you do need help with something, if you feel like you're having the weight of carrying and being and doing the all things and overwhelm situation where you feel like you're doing everything and getting no assistance, then be mindful that men are very single focused, and if you do want his help, just ask in a way that's not going to sound as though you expect him to drop everything straight away. So saying something like, when you've got a moment, it would be lovely if you could help me with this, is far better than, you never help me in the house and I'm having to do it all and you're just a lazy so-and-so. That isn't going to be particularly helpful. So again, the communication is key, and learning key tips on when it's a good time to ask your man for help, because men usually don't ask for help. In man culture, you know, men will only ask for help if it's a real last resort, and then when they do ask for help, you know, then they do know that, you know, that it really is a last resort. So they don't necessarily know that as women want help unless we ask for it, because they're so used to solving their own problems. So again, be mindful that men and women are different. We think differently, we look differently, we behave differently. So don't expect your man to act how he would with other guys, or act how you are with your girlfriends. So if you need some girly support, it's good to get on the phone to the girlfriends or on Zoom, and know that there'll be that listening ear if you need that listening ear, if you find your man is not that receptive to it right at this moment. But just know that it's not because he doesn't want to be engaging, it's just because sometimes guys just think and behave differently to women, and it's just a different approach, and we just have to be mindful that we celebrate our differences. So what would be a good way of asking yourself some empowering questions in a situation? If you're having a bit of a tension scenario in your home life, it would be to sort of, when you've got that moment of reflection, to think about how might I have contributed to this rather than laying blame, because sometimes we're all guilty of that, aren't we? It's very easy to think he's done this or he never does that, rather than thinking, you know what, how might I have contributed to that? Is there this misunderstanding, you know, on reflection around not understanding that men think and behave differently? And another thing would be to think about, how do you receive love? Sometimes women aren't very good at receiving. They want to give, 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 give. And sometimes we need to step back again and think about, how can we set boundaries to make sure that we get enough me time to get our own batteries recharged? So it's reflecting on, when are going to be the times that you need to say, no, I can't. And you know what? Your spouse and your kids will respect that, believe it or not. Just try it. So I hope that's been of help, and there's been some useful tips within that. And here's to happy, healthy relationships in lockdown going forward.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Really appreciate it. I think it's not just in lockdown. I think even after lockdown,
Yes.
I think some really powerful things that you just said, and especially, you know, as an entrepreneur working from home, it can be really difficult to really balance and to keep everyone happy. And you're right. I think we have to fill our own cup up before we can then serve others and be a good parent once more. And I have done it many times. I have kind of just told my husband, right, just step back a little bit, I need this time now. And then after that, you know, I'm back again, and then, you know, then you can step away from things and from looking after the kids. And we've managed quite well, I have to say, so far, but there'll be another 3 weeks to go. So.
Who knows how long.
So well, at least. So thank you. It's been amazing, really great. So thank you to all the three speakers. If you allow me just to come back on the big screen, and I just want to share something with you, and if you're interested or if you want to come on board or not, it doesn't matter. I just want to share what we're doing in the background. As these amazing ladies are actually contributors to the Empowerment Portal, and the Empowerment Portal is very dear to me because it's kind of grew from a vision, from an idea that I had through 18 months ago. And then now to tell my story a little bit, about 18 months ago, in August 2018, I had the vision to go and write the book with 100 inspirational women and to inspire women. And through publishing the books, I was invited to be speaker, and then a few HR directors actually invited me into their organizations. And then it started off initially with empowering women, but I think we need to help men as well, especially in nowadays in this situation. And a few people then approached me and said, well, where can we find more resources? It seems like we get on the job training, but we may not get the, you know, like the whole personal development as to how we can develop as people, how we can be more happy at home, because quite often the organization gives you some sort of training that you need for the job, but like the mental wellness, I believe especially, will be even more so important. And there's some gaps I realized in terms of how the market is being served right now. And this was the idea of this Empowerment Portal. Like, hey, I've got so many amazing women that were featured in my books, because the books were a collaboration with 50, and there'll be another 50 to go from now, so 100 women that all have a gift to share. So we have come together, and we're sharing resources for men and women inside the portal. So what I'll do is I'll just literally just want to show you what that looks like, and potentially if you do need resources, you know, if you need the support, then obviously there is a way to join us, right? So I'm just going to share my PowerPoint. So I think you can see that. Okay, so here we go. There is a few of us who have come together. There's going to be right now around 25 So it's 25 different service providers, coaches, therapists, leadership consultants, HR consultants, and myself as an entrepreneur who teaches entrepreneurship. So we're a bunch of different people who've come together and brought the best resources into this one portal. Now, I think we recognize our current challenges are obviously worry and anxiety and potentially job loss. And of course, we're looking after, financial crisis, more money worries, health issues, loss and grief, and of course, juggling relationships, as we just heard. And of course, doing all the homeschooling and additional activities which we may have never thought we needed to do, right? So what help do people really need right now? They need a way to cope, reassurance, and a community to support and inspire. And I think this is one of the ways we can actually help people. We're doing the webinars, and as we are building out the portal and getting more members in, to kind of help and support with that. And it's all about providing tools to stay calm and potentially help self-manage in these times and manage others. Like, for example, Lynn talk about relationships. So she has resources inside the portal that go much, much deeper. And so does Gloria, has more resources in the portal, and Susanne as well, and really exercises and things that you can actually do. And we want to have ways to stay safe and healthy physically and mentally. And of course, even more so important, it will be more and more important a way forward, and resetting priorities, perhaps in career, or even thinking about going into entrepreneurship. Some people may be forced to think about entrepreneurship, or may need a plan B, or have a second job, or whatever it may be, So we just want to provide the opportunity to actually start learning, to start engaging, and actually getting access to not only the resources, but also to the experts. And I think there's an element of renewed leadership skills to pivot and deal with future challenges. So this is also for those that are in the corporate world and are potentially leading teams, or are emerging leaders, or sort of team members that want to actually continue to develop. So yes, this is for individuals, for organizations, and its employees as a whole. So a whole organization could take this portal as part of the benefits to actually help the entire workforce with whatever they need. And I'll talk to you about that in a minute as to what we actually cover. And it's for those who really recognize the current shifts during and after the crisis, and then want to get prepared to up-level and pivot in all areas of their life. So how is this being delivered? It is an online portal, so it's quite handy, I guess, since we're in lockdown. So online is the new way. We have over 50 curated training, videos, workbooks, audios, you name it, right now, and it's growing. There will be many more to come. As we continue to get more topics, we are continuing to get more contributors on board and see where the gaps are. And this is the beauty, because our members can actually ask for specific training, and we will source that. And we're constantly growing, right? As I just said, we will go out and we will source those topics if we get these inquiries. And what we're trying to do is to really create real conversations through the community. So we'll also have weekly interactive webinars with our portal experts, because we don't just want this to be like people go in and watch their videos and trying to learn from videos. We know people need some interaction and some accountability, and someone to potentially talk to or discuss, or talk about the ideas and how this could be relevant in how they can implement it in their own life. So this is something really important to us. And there will be also options to work with experts, of course, live again in sort of a training environment if needed, in group support, or just on one-to-one. And this one-to-one can also be done online as well, because we work globally. Now, this is an overview of all the different programs that we have prepared, and basically there were 5 different sections, and we've just recently added a bonus section that we call the survival kit to beat uncertainty. And I will talk to you about that in the next slide as to what's actually included, because I think this is something that we need to recognize right now in these times, to really get those resources very quickly and go through what's exactly needed right now. But then we also have other programs like the career coaching, where people will have access to career coaches and HR advisors, as well as looking at how do I go through an interview. Maybe they're going to go and need to rewrite their CVs, so we'll have some help in there in that sense too. We have physical wellness. Of course, this is all about being physically healthy, like with exercises, with meal plans, and also quite a lot is about logistics. If you're a busy person and you're struggling with the logistics, then we have a plan in there for you too. And then obviously the entrepreneurship program, there is the whole path of, you know, if you want to open your own business and become an online entrepreneur, for example, it will actually lead you exactly through that path. Then we have leadership tools, and this is about growing as a leader, leading teams. You have lots of different skills under the banner of leadership. And then the mental wellness, it's all about relationships, of course. It's all about mental wellness in the sense of talking about potentially self-sabotage or removing any sort of blocks and increasing self-belief. We have also meditations in there and lots and lots of different exercises. So just give you a couple of examples. So there's a sneak peek into the portal, what we have under the mental wellness. For example, Elaine is one of the ladies who's delivering content, and you know, we've got some really beautifully created videos and instructions and workbooks that's really, really clear to follow. Then here we have Gloria. Gloria has a range of amazing webinars in there as well, and much more to come. So I'm very excited about that, Gloria. And then we have also the physical wellness. We have two amazing personal trainers that are lots of fun and engaging, that about food and I think sleep they talk about, and water. So not only about eating and about exercising. So this is a lot of fun. And then, for example, here we have Melissa. So she's talking about self-confidence and, you know, for example, doing some visualization and different assessments as to you know, how one may be feeling, and there's different tools in there as well. So here we go. That's a bit of an overview. And the survival kit, of course, this is something we have prepared right now as an additional bonus, as you will find in there, like an immunity boosting audio, very, very powerful, by one of our therapists. We also have obviously the whole bereavement webinar in there as well that Gloria is producing right now. And other things that we got in there, I think we got some other meditations, and I can't really remember. I think, yeah, reduce anxiety, it says here at the bottom, beat depression, enhance immune system, resilience, career direction, homeschooling even. Yes, we have some homeschooling stuff in there as well, resources, and remote working resources. So there you have it. If you would like to join us long term and receive these resources and join the community, then here are 2 membership options, and we've really reduce those down to ensure we can help as many people as possible. At this moment in time, we're actually allowing people to come in through our special EmopwerMENow licenses. So the lower level is basically a self-study option, which is just £97 a year, and you can cancel anytime. So even if you just wanted to stay for the first 12 months and get all these amazing resources worth thousands of pounds, in my opinion, then you'll only pay £97. And the second level, where you actually get mentorship options, so you could actually connect with someone like Gloria and Susanne and Lynn, and you know, have a kind of a short one-to-one session and see, you know, what your needs are, or you have questions from their programs that they've got inside the portal, then you can upgrade to the Empower Evolving Leaders, which has its membership option at only $4.97 a year. And in order to join, there's a little link there. So that will get you straight to the sales page. You then press whichever option you prefer and enroll, and you will receive an email and with a username, password, and of course we'll then be in touch with a welcome email. So that's it from me. And if you have any questions for us, or if you're watching somewhere and you want to leave us a comment, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to see what you think about these webinars. If you have any ideas for further webinars or topics, then of course we're always listening and want to continue to support this fabulous community. So thank you so much to all my amazing speakers, and we will see you soon.